Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma231 here. Back in today to talk about Weekly Shonen Jump, issue number 41 of 2023. And this is a very interesting issue of Shonen Jump, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, it's a very good one, but it has a lot of interesting different things going on in it. Of course, we have a series ending this week in Tenmaku Cinema, but also it is the start of a new series also, with MamaYuyu also joining the lineup, right? But another interesting thing about it is that I only have 11 series to talk about today instead of the normal 12 to 13 that I've had the previous few weeks. But of course, with series ending and new series beginning, that number will get back up to that steady amount as time goes on. And I don't really have too much else to say before we hop into it. I mean, like normal, we'll be talking about all 11 series I read in Shonen Jump and ranking them in complete order from what I thought was the best series to what I also thought was the worst series. And every single little number inside of that, right? If you want to know what I ranked 5th out of 11, just wait till the end of the video or jump to the timestamp I've labeled down below and you can go check it out. But I will also be picking a MVP or my most valuable character of the week, or pretty much just who I liked most, right? And normally I would start with My Hero Academia, but there is no My Hero Academia. So let's start with One Piece. Oh wait, there's no One Piece. So let's start with Undead Unluck, chapter number 174. This chapter is titled Unprince Charmant, which, interesting chapter title, right? I mean, of course, we know that Rip, who this chapter is obviously based on a lot, is a Prince Charming, but he's an Unprince Charmant. So that's a little interesting, right? So this chapter pretty much focuses on Rip. It just shows how much of a good guy Rip is. In the beginning, we see that he walks into hospital, and he's a little bit of a monologue, pretty much just saying, hey, I hate the distinct air that hangs in hospitals. He's like, that air that represents the dreary of death. But he's like, I want to get rid of that air here in this hospital, because a hospital is a good place. And he's like, after all, I'm going to heal everyone and repair everything. As we see Rip interacting with a lot of children who are just sort of walking around and doing various things, and we pretty much show that Rip has made specialized little candies for each and every one of them, just showing how good of a guy he is and everything. Eventually, he ends up just hopping out of a window to go ride a horse by, of course, Layla's room, who is in this hospital, as we see that Layla's sort of repeating a little bit of a saying or something, saying just southwest, southwest, look in that direction, eat by 10 every day. And if you do that on May 3rd at 10:05, you'll see a prince on a horse. And of course, Rip is doing this as he rides a horse. He's like, Layla, I have returned. How are you feeling, right? And of course, she freaks out, and then Latla freaks out just to show the dynamic between the three of them just going on. And as time goes on, the three of them just start talking, and Rip just asks Latla, hey, when will be a good day to perform the surgery on Layla? When can we do this so it'll be successful? I mean, use your fortune-telling abilities. Latla just won't answer Rip's question at all whenever he just asks, come on, he insists to. But eventually, Latla's like, alright, hold up, you two. I can tell you one thing, alright? The day of your wedding is going to be June 6th, seems like a good date, right? And as she says that, she walks out, right? And Rip and Layla just give each other a little look as Rip goes to hang behind, as Latla sort of just pulls him in, and Latla sort of has this moment where she just thinks hey, thinking on their dynamic back when they were all kids, the three of them together that we've clearly seen throughout the last loop of Undead Unluck, or the first loop we've seen in the story, the 99th loop, right? You guys get the point. But we pretty much see that Layla is pretty much just saying, hey, if I'm going to die and not get any better, I want you two to be happy together, right? So at this point, Rip just gets down on one knee and just sort of pulls out a ring and is like, all right, hey, we're going to spend our life together, it's no big problem. And as he's doing this, him and Layla are both smiling at each other. All of a sudden, Layla just coughs. And she doesn't just cough, she coughs up a lot of blood. As all of a sudden, we see she just coughs up a bunch of blood and just collapses. And we see this is happening all over the hospital as a lot of patients are suddenly just getting worse and worse. Their conditions are just, not getting any better, right? And Rip is just like, hey, okay, what the hell's going on here? As he's rushing out Layla on a gurney. And as all of this is happening, everybody's just freaking out in the hospital. And eventually, Rip's just like, okay, Layla, hey, don't give up. You absolutely will not die here. My sister said we're going to get married on June 6th, and she never has lied about a prediction in her life. I know this is going to happen. As all of a sudden, he looks up, and standing in the way of the gurney here is a girl. And of course, we can tell this girl is Fuko, as Rip just yells her like, hey, who are you? I don't care who you are, just get out of the way. This is an emergency situation right now. As eventually Fuko just speaks up and says, hey, the cause is Uma-sick, the target of our current quest, and the 10th Master Rule Uma. Mr. Rip, let me help you. For this illness, your unrepair will do the trick. As we see that Latla is also standing there right next to Fuko. So this is a really awesome chapter, in my opinion. It shows us just how much of a good person Rip is, and also the dynamic between the two sisters and Rip, which is just great. Still, I don't like the whole things. I've always wanted to call one Layla and the other one Latla, and the other one's it, right? Very confusing names, but it gets a really nice point across until eventually we see Fuko at the end here, which I didn't even mention, but she is holding the Blade Runner boots that Rip, of course, sacrificed his own legs to put on to give him like that firing range attack power. So she is holding those, right? And yeah, we also get the introduction of, okay, Master Rules are going to be something in the future. That's really interesting, right? But good chapter. I don't really have too much to say about it. So if that, let's hop over to the Ichinose Family Deadly Sins, chapter number 40. This chapter is titled Sota's Despair. So I'm sort of just going to fly through this one because it is a lot of, like, not really important information to get to a single point at the end of the chapter. So, okay, Sota is very much in despair after his whole found family has just disappeared. Eventually, Kenta runs away, and Iono, that is the Pokemon lady, Ayano, that's her name, also runs off to look after Kenta. Sota and Tsubasa follow, and they have a big talk. All of a sudden, they just keep on talking. They just keep apologizing for, hey, I thought if I ran away from my problems, this could be a perfect family, when it truly isn't. All of a sudden, they turn a corner to find a police car, and inside this police car is Kenta, who is hugging a woman who we presume is his mother. We pretty much learned that the reason Kenta's mother wasn't around was because she was in the hospital for appendicitis, and Kenta was supposed to stay with some neighbors for the time, but of course he ran away and stayed with all of these people instead, right? At this point, all of a sudden, as they're talking, we see that Ayano gets a call from her father, who apparently didn't know where she was at. So eventually, she just goes back to her family, and Kenta and Tsubasa are stood on their own, right? We eventually cut over to a scene in the train station. I don't know what type of train station this is, but it's a train station where Kenta is trying to throw away the shirt that all of them purchased together, right? But Tsubasa's just like stopping him. He's like, hey, I mean, my shirt got stepped on, but I'm still taking the shirt with me, right? Sort of convincing Sota to not throw the shirt away on a whim like this, right? He may cherish it in the future, right? And eventually, as, oh my gosh, Sota is just sulking here. Tsubasa pretty much snaps him out, just saying like, hey, obsessing over all that stuff isn't going to help us in the long run right now. Let's go back to our family, the Ichinose family, right? And as they're all talking, Sota's like, hey, why are we doing this? I don't want to, right? But Tsubasa's like, hey, I don't know why, but let's go home so we can figure it out. And he's like, besides, everyone's there, Grandma and Grandpa won't wake up, and Dad's always exhausted from his job, Mom's always pissed off, and Shiori's almost never home, but the seven of us are a family. And we're all alive and well, and so are you, Sota, right? So he's like, no matter what happens for now, let's go home to Tokyo. As we see, they are boarding the train and going home, so this is a fine progression. We get to see the Ichinose family all back together, so I really don't have anything to complain about there, right? And next up is Martial Master Asumi, chapter number 12. This chapter is titled Round 12 Blue Belt. So, I'm going to spoil it now. Nito gets a blue belt here, right? But we pretty much get the beginning of the chapter as Nito is sort of thinking about his life, and he's like, just up until my dad died, I spent my days believing that life was just the way it was, right? That I would never change. He's like, I don't want to be seen as a weirdo, and I did everything I could not to stand out, right? But we see that he's looking around the gym of Yoshitoki's MMA, and he's just thinking, even though it was completely suffocating, but here I can truly be myself, right? As we sort of see that he looks around, we see that Yuya's in a match currently, and while he's not doing great, we see that he's still training, and he's in a place where he can go and do what he wants to do. Like, he can dive into the thing he loves in a safe environment here. So as the two of them are talking, we eventually see that Now walks over to the two of them and is like, hey, whatever you do, just take it at a good pace. And eventually we just see that Now and Nito start to spar. Nito just thinks some more, and he's just like, oh man, this MMA is just really fun. Before, I think I felt embarrassed by my grandpa creating his own martial art. Our style always felt like a shackle around my life, but now it's really useful, right? And he's like, the movements Yoshitoki's taught me, or the movements my grandpa's taught me, resemble Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I can't help but wonder if that's where our style began, right? But as Nito's thinking all this, he finally just stops and he's like, oh, wait a second, I've got to do something about this underground promotion that Kazuro wants me to be in, right? And he's like, well, Kazuro decided I'd be entering. Like, I'm already sort of into brackets, so I got to figure out a way to do this, right? And he's like, I haven't told anyone yet. But eventually, as all this ends, we see that the sparring match with Nito and Now ends. So whenever that ends, we see that everybody in the gym sort of comes to get in a big circle to sort of just like talk about gym stuff, right? And Yoshitoki's first announcement is just he offers Nito a blue belt, as he says that, hey, over the past month while you've been doing classes in the gym, you have amazing skills, and you've already become adjusted to the rules of Jiu-Jitsu very soon. And he says, if I were to offer you, if I were to sign you off to joining a tournament as a white belt, however, some of the other sensei might give me an earful about sending someone as strong as yourself. So while it's not traditional, I present you with the rank of a blue belt, right? And Nito just thinks like, man, this is just so nice, and like, it doesn't matter about the belt color. He's like, but just thank you for giving this to me and honoring this. And after all of this, he just thinks they gave me a blue belt, so I can't go behind any of their backs now, not after this, right? So eventually we see this is at the end of the day, Nito is there with Yuya and Now. He just tells the two of them to go ahead and go on your own. I need to talk with Yoshitoki real fast. So as he walks into the office, the next thing we see is just Yoshitoki just saying, no, like, I cannot authorize you to enter that tournament as part of this gym, right? And of course Nito is like, oh man, I figured as much, right? But Yoshitoki's like, god damn it, Kazuro, I know to drop out Tisseré, and he's just thinks about it all, but he's like, there's no way I can let you enter under Yoshi's MMA. This gym is a place where I have prided myself in letting parents know that if they send their kids here, they will be safe, right? And he's like, or at least that's what I want to be, so I cannot let you enter under the banner of it, right? So, Yoshitoki's like, so can you turn Kazuro down, Nito? But Nito is like, well, the thing is, like, I know this sounds really bad, but I kind of want to do this myself. I want this chance to test myself, and I need to get started before it's too late, as he thinks of his grandfather, who, in all reality, probably doesn't have too much time left, as he thinks about that, and of course, he needs to be able to get into the pros so he can have Kazuro come see his grandfather, right? That is Nito's big motivation here, right? And as he's just thinking this, he's like, and eventually his point is like, I'm sorry, I know this is really dumb, but this is something that I need to do and see through. So even though I love this gym, like, I really love coming here, training with everybody, but I don't want to cause any further problems for you. That is why I'd like to withdraw. Thank you so much for everything. My time here is brief, but I had an amazing time here, right? And at this point, he also sets down the blue belt that he was given earlier that evening, just saying, like, if I can't take this anymore, like, this is what I'm giving up here, right? But Yoshitoki's like, well, don't break my heart by saying that you're already withdrawing, right? As he calls over Iwa, one of the other professionals inside the Yoshitoki MMA, and he's like, listen, Nito, as a grown-up, I can't hear all of that, and he's like, no, as a friend, I can't let you just walk out of here. And he's like, if you're going to enter, then I need you to meet some conditions, right? And he's like, fail, and I won't let you enter even if you quit all this, right? I'm gonna make sure, right? He's like, there's 3 rules, and here's the first. He's like, you're going to have to spar with Itawake here. He's a former MMA pro, right? And he's like, 2 rounds, 3 minutes each. Is this tourney's training, right? And as Nito just looks, and he's like, very grateful to this, but Yoshitoki's like, I'm familiar with all your grappling abilities, but you need to be able to handle a tournament, right? She's like, if you want to enter, make me believe you can, right? As Nito's just like, I'll do it, and he like takes off his ray and gets into the ring, right? And as they're doing it, they get into a little bit of a fight here, and Yoshitoki's just telling Nito some good information of like, alright, hey, do this, right? And eventually Nito just asks like, hey, Yoshitoki, can I use my thing? And we obviously see it, Nito's talking about his finisher, right? But we see that Yoshitoki's like, hey, you don't need permission, go ahead and do it. So Nito's like, okay. And at this point, we smash cut to 3 weeks later, right? As we see we're in the dropout ring, as we see that a bunch of the people in the audience are like, hey, start the damn tournament already, like we came here for a fight, right? As eventually they're all talking, and we see that the announcer is here, and he's just like, alright everybody, thank you for your patience tonight. The Dropouts Integral Tournament to crown the king of the 70 kilogram and under class will now commence. So let's rumble, you bastards, as he just like goes out of this. We eventually cut back to the 3 conditions that Yoshitoki made Nito agree to, right? Of course, we know the first was to spar with Iwa to make sure that he was all prepared. The second was to tell your family, right? And he's like, I can help you explain if you need it. As we cut over to Nito's family, where they're all watching the screen, and we see that even Nito's grandpa may even be watching Nito fight, right? And the third is to take Yoshitoki as Nito's second. He's like, not as your gym rep, but as your friend, right? As we see that Yoshitoki's here along with Iwa, and they're both here. And Yoshitoki's like, hey, trust in yourself and do it. I only allow this because I know, Nito, that you stand a chance, right? As the announcer just continues on, just saying, like, the younger brother of the Dropout's legendary rising star, Kazulo, Nito Asumi, right? And he just announces him, and Yoshitoki's like, alright, Nito, time to win this. As Nito's just thinking, like, alright, everybody, you better be watching this at home, especially you, Kazulo, because today is my true MMA debut fight, right? And as this ends, we sort of get a little end gag of the panel as we see that Yoshitoki looks over at Nito, and Nito's legs are shaking very big, right? So, like, Nito is definitely scared about this tournament. This is an awesome chapter, how it builds up the whole idea of Nito enjoys everything about this gym, right? He gets granted a belt and pretty much gets an honor in the gym, but then to be able to do this thing that he feels like he really needs to do, he needs to drop out of the gym, but then showing that Yoshitoki isn't going to let him ruin himself like that, and he wants him to continue being a student there, so it is just an amazing moment, and eventually just seeing that, alright, yeah, we're going to see Nito in the ring actually fighting some other people. This is just really awesome, right? I mean, to this point, I think I mentioned it in this recording, because I've had to re-record this video twice, just because the first 2 just didn't come out good at all. But yeah, like I said, I am filming this like 4 months after the fact of when these chapters came out, so there's definitely a big discrepancy. So this arc is already done by the point I'm recording this, and this is just an amazing beginning to it, right? Well, next up is the new series, MamaYuyu chapter number 1. This chapter is titled, I think the chapter title is all the way at the end of the chapter, so I've got to scroll through like the 50 pages here real fast, and oh, there we go. Is it gonna work? Oh, are we getting our technical difficulties? Chapter number 1 is titled "The Day I Became a Hero," right? So we start off this chapter with, of course, a 1-page color page, eventually going into a 2-page color page, as we get the idea of 2 words, hero and demon lord, right? As we understand, hero is one who vanquishes darkness and brings peace to the world, and a demon lord is one who rules the world through fear shrouded in darkness, right? And we get narration that's going, and now this world once again holds 2 who bear the demon hero moniker. And then we get the idea of, sort of, right? As we see the established demon lord and the established hero sort of here, as we see the 2 of them are sort of interacting with each other, right? And we see a bustling world going around, and obviously the whole point of this, just to spoil it now, is that the hero and demon lord in this country sort of get together, so heroes and demons are living in peace, because as we see our hero Corleo walking down the street, we see that there are people with demon horns and regular humans coexisting together, right? And as everything's going on, we start off this chapter sort of like a straight interview as somebody's interviewing people, right? And we understand that the war in Memorial Day is around the corner, right? And they're just talking to each other and interviewing people about the war. And there's not really a lot of important stuff here, but eventually one guy just says, like, oh, the current hero? Oh, man, what's his name? The one, I mean, like Cormello or something like that, right? But no, his name is Corleo, right? And that's the whole point of it, right? So that people don't exactly know who today's hero is. Now, this series, of course, I'm recording this way after the fact, but this series is very interesting for its paneling, layout, and storytelling style, in my opinion, right? Because we get a lot of interesting paneling and storytelling going on within these pages, right? As we see at this point, we just start with some narration just going that Corleo was conflicted. He was a hero. And just as the previous hero passed away, a sigil appeared on his 2-month-old hand. As an orphan, Corleo was taken in by the demon lord MamaMa, who is the person who we saw before, the current demon lord MamaMa. Pretty funny name, right? And it says, he was raised in the Eastern Army dorms until age 16. He lived in a time of peace when fighting wasn't necessary. Which is why Corleo was conflicted, right? As we eventually see that he's walking down the street and he offers to help a old lady just carry something across the road, right? Just being a good person, right? And we get more narration just saying like, for he couldn't find the answer to his own question. What does it mean to be a hero, right? As we get fully introduced to the Demon Lord MamaMa, age number 38, right? As we pretty much learned that she is taken on a motherly role for Corleo, pretty much being her mother, as they talk about, like, the sigils, and Corleo's is like, I mean, I was thinking of maybe doing some military training or something, right? As MamaMa's is like, hey, don't be stupid, you're already 18, I mean, you need to go off to college, right? And he's like, neither you nor I have duties in the military anymore, and he's like, besides, these are the problem anyway, as they look at the sigils on the back of her hand, a sigil for the hero and a sigil for a demon lord, right? And as they just like keep on talking, there's a little bit where Corleo's is like, I mean, what does it mean to be a hero anyway? And he's just like, if I'm a hero, shouldn't I be like the hollow guy who was a hero before me, right? And as they just keep talking about, eventually Mama is like, hey, don't keep fixating on the past, right? Like, I mean, you're better than that. We see that a little while later. We see that Corleo goes to the Museum of Demon Hero History and looks around at all the previous heroes and demon lords, as he looks at the 58th hero, Popo Lopo, and like the 101st hero, Bipe, and the predecessor to Corleo, Hollow. We actually don't get a number for Hollow, but we pretty much just understand like how important all of these heroes are, right? And he just thinks like, I study, I eat, and I sleep, and I live an easy life, so does that really make me a hero? As we eventually see as he's standing there, a family comes up to want to get a picture of Corleo. So Corleo's just thinking about this, and he's just like, you know what? I think I want to stop being a hero, right? As all of a sudden he's walking around, walking out of the Demon Hero Exchange Museum, or whatever it was called, as some guys run up to him in the street, right? And they're just like, hey, Corleo, you have to come with us right now to the Eastern Army HQ. Like, come on, you have to go right now. As eventually we see that Corleo goes, and he gets there, and there is a new person there, right? And we see that these two military personnel are like, all right, his name is EvanAllGreen, and apparently he's a hero from a different world. As all of a sudden we see his character, who, I have to give it to the author, EvanAllGreen is just such a stupid name, but I just find it so funny. I mean, in Japanese, I mean, this is all probably written in katakana, so it's just spoken like EvanAllGreen, which, of course, those words mean nothing to the Japanese people, so it's just like they can call a character that, which in English means, alright, this guy's name is Evan and he's all green. I mean, so it's just funny, but pretty much I'll just refer to him by Evan for the rest of the chapter, right? Evan is here and he's just like, man, I can't believe there's really a hero here besides me. And he's like, I'm the hero, EvanAllGreen. He's like, I believe that while fighting the Demon Lord, I got hit with some sort of teleportation attack, sending me to this world, right? As Corleos just looks like the hero sigil, then he really must be, he is a real hero, right? Eventually we see that MamaMa runs in the room. She's like, alright, okay, what's going on here? And we see that Evan gets out a sword and goes to attack MamaMa, who of course has the Demon Lord sigil on her hand, right? Evan starts freaking out and he's like, I thought it was strange when I heard that demons and heroes and demons, or humans and demons, coexist in this world. And he's just like freaking out, like, what's going on here? And he's just like, oh man. But eventually, as he gets apprehended, he's like, my apologies, I mean you no harm. My body only acted on instinct, but hear me well. Before long, in a few days, the Demon Lord King of Disaster will come to this world. And he's like, I am to blame for not finishing it off. And he's like, it's strong. I doubt anyone but me can slay. And he's like, after I slay, you can do whatever you want with me. So could you just give me time until then? And eventually here, we get another very interesting panel as we see that Mama and Corley are just looking very shocked. We see that one of the military guys is like, all right, hey, hold on, we'll just wait a second, right? And they're all just talking like, you're a hero from our world, that's ridiculous. And they're talking like, all right, hey, when did you come to this world? And Evan just says that he's like, if I recall, about 8 days ago, right? As they just talk, and eventually this scientist guy's like, all right, as valedictorian of this university, and he's just like, there couldn't be two heroes in this world. It would disrupt the world's laws, and it might cause fatal risks in the planet. And it's been 8 whole days. As long as he's alive, we have no idea what will happen to the world. We don't have a second to lose. We must execute him now. And eventually he's just talking, and Evan's eventually like, that goes if you're assuming that I am a real hero. And he's like, then it would give credence to the coming of a different demon lord, meaning that if you kill me right now, you would have 2 demon lords to deal with, right? And Evan's just like, all right, I'll defeat the demon lord without a second to lose. And he's like, afterward, I don't care if you kill me. That'll be both best for both sides, right? We get some more narration where Corleo's just like, he's like, all right, what's going on here? He's like, I could feel my heart tremble. And eventually we see that in the underground dungeon, Evan is locked up in a room, and Corleo comes to see him, right? And Evan's like, all right, hey, so you're this world's hero, huh? What's your name? And Corleo's obviously like, hey, my name is Corleo. Pretty simple enough, right? And eventually, Evan's just like, hey, Corleo, this is a very strange world. Nothing here is same as the world that I am from. To think that people and demon lords could be sitting side by side. And he eventually says, I mean, you have sigils, and you have no sigil sorcery either, right? I mean, this world is just really odd. And Corleo's just like, sigil sorcery? What are you talking about? As Evan sticks out his hand and flames come out of it, right? And he's like, if you know about sigil sorcery, then you wouldn't have to put me in an unbooby-celled trap, right? And he's like, it's just common sense, right? And Corleo's just like, wow, that's crazy. As Evan's just like, I mean, I assume you're down here because you have business. And he's like, what do you want? And Corleo's like, well, I wanted to talk to another hero other than myself. He's like, this chance doesn't come often at all. As all of a sudden, Evan's like, I see. And next thing we know, they're in a forest, right? As Evan just says, like, hey, let's change locales. As they're in this forest, and Corleo's just like, huh, what in the world? What just happened, right? And Evan's like, this is also what sigil sorcery can do. And he's like, don't worry, I'll return to my cell after we have this little chat, right? And he's like, I've also never seen a hero other than myself either, so like, I guess this here will do, right? As he eventually just goes and cuts down a tree, and somehow with that, he makes 2 wooden swords out of it, and he's just like, hey, we can chat while we spar, right? And eventually, we see the 2 of them are swinging swords, and Evan's like, have you not studied the blade? And Corleo's like, no, of course I haven't, right? And, Evan's just like, I mean, man, that's really impressive then, right? As Corleo's like, really, what are you talking about? But Evan's eventually just like, yeah, really. As he just goes and nearly takes out, Corleo, right? But before he can, we sort of see that, Corleo, I don't know if he quite blocked it, but he sort of stops the blade from coming down. As he's like, hero, Evan, what does that really mean? And Evan pretty much just says, like, a hero, and Corleo just goes through about his whole thing of, like, here's the demon lords we used to fight, but eventually, we achieved peace. And he's like, I don't know, how to do anything, and I'm not even strong, I don't fight, I don't hate demons, I don't want to fight them. And he's like, even so, I envy you so much. And he's like, I'm such a fraud that I want to quit being a hero, right? But eventually, Evan just talks up again. He's like, hey, Corleo, I don't know about any of that. You can search for your own answers, right? And he's like, don't seek them from others, right? as eventually we see this is potentially a day later or something, as I guess we infer that Corleo and Evan went back to their cells and all of that, as Corleo just thinks more about what is a hero and who is suited to be a hero, right? And as he's walking down the street thinking about how he can answer these questions, he sees that there are two bullies ganging up on a kid, and Corleo looks down at this, but then he looks away and sort of just cries. He just thinks about what he's got to do about this, and he eventually walks down, and he eventually ends up saving the kid, as he pretty much tells up, like, hey, ganging up on somebody's lame, like, you two should just get out of here while you have the chance. So as they're doing this, we see that he talks with the kid and gets him out of there, but eventually Corleo comes home, and he's got a bandage on the side of his face, right? And Mama looks at me, and he's like, I got into a little bit of a stupid fight last night. Like, that's not too much of a problem, right? He's like, I didn't punch anyone, I just gave him a warning sign, right? But Mama really just freaks out, just like, what kind of fool are you, if things took a turn for worse, and what would have happened to you then, right? And like, do you think you're some kind of hero now? And Corleo just thinks, like, I am a hero. If I'm not, then what's this sigil doing on my right hand? He's like, what does that make of me? And he's like, I don't even know who I am anymore. And he just sort of really gets taken down by this. And he's like, if this is what being born a hero gets me, then I'd rather not have been born at all, right? But Mama sort of just takes him, and she's like, hey, Corleo, I'm sorry I wasn't taking you too seriously earlier, right? And the two of them sort of talk. And she pretty much pulls out the idea of, hey, Corleo, don't think at all that you should have been born at all. Like, you are still important, right? Eventually, we see that Corleo just sort of runs off and just like, man, I'm just so pathetic. And he's like, what am I doing here? But eventually, he just thinks, and he's like, man, I guess I'll go back and say sorry. As he's standing behind a window, and all of a sudden, the entire world goes pitch black. As Corleo's like, what in the world's going on here, right? As we see that Evan has suddenly gone behind him, and everybody's like, Nightfall, what's going on here? And everybody's like, what's going on? And eventually we see that one of these scientist guys like, hey, Lady Mama, something gargantuan is heading straight toward us. As we see that Corleo is now in this weird space with Evan, and he's just freaking out like, hey, what's going on here, right? But Evan's just like, hey, I teleported us here of Sigil Sorcery, and now we're floating, right? And Corleo's like, hey, that's not what I meant. I mean, I was wondering that too, but like, still, why did you bring me along? As Evan just says, well, here it comes. And he says, the Demon Lord End. As we sort of look over and we get this idea of the Demon Lord End, it's pretty much an amalgamation of a bunch of eyes, human faces, a mouth. I mean, it is just very weird, and like, it's just an amalgamation of just the human face, hands, eyes, and just everything with it. As we see that it is just screaming for Evan, it's just saying, kill Evan, right? And as all this is going on, right, eventually finds Evan, is like, here you are, Evan, right? As we see that Corleo's almost stood in shock from this. He's just like, what's going on here, right? And eventually Evan's like, wow, this end is actually awfully small here. Must have used a lot to come here. And he's like, all right, what's over? As all of a sudden we see that he holds up his hand, uses Sigil Sorcery to sort of go, and it shrinks it down into a box. And a very interesting panel here on page 38. Evan is eventually just like, hey, Corleo, the reason I brought you here is to kill you right here, right now. As Corleo's like, huh? As we see that he's also started bleeding from some of this, and he's just like, but Evan keeps just saying like, hey, multiple heroes and demon lords existing in a world will indeed cause rifts. And if I get rid of you and this thing, there will be one hero and one demon lord. He's like, I'm going to reside in this world permanently. And he's like, the environment of my former world is no longer inhabitable. Death awaits me, even if I kill the Demon King. That is why I use my Sigil Sorcery to come to this world. So before you die, let me ask you this. What does it mean to be a hero? As all of a sudden, we see that Mama and everybody else are just talking. And they're just like, hey, it stopped. What's going on here? A giant life orb is spotted with coordinates with Evan and Corleo. As Mama's like, huh, what, Corleo? And all of a sudden we see that the left hand of Mama is sort of just glowing and burning sort of holes into her skin. As we eventually see that Corleo is just like here with Evan. And Evan's just like, hey, what does it mean to be a hero? Corleo's like, hey, I have no clue. And at this point, Evan just speaks up again like, hey, I'm asking you, Corleo, what does it mean to be a hero? as eventually we see that behind Evan, End has sort of revived, and we sort of see like that it used the demon sigil of this world to start, which of course it used MamaYuyu sigil to reimburse, right? But we see that Corleo just gets more narration. It's going like, I've never known what a hero was. I thought I knew when I was a child, but I ended up clueless in the end. A hero is strong and fights against their foes. That's what they're supposed to be, and yet. But wait, that's the answer. And you'd be like, but then what? I don't understand. A hero is strong and fights against their foes. They're always protecting something. As we see that Corleo jumps up, grabs Evan, and pushes him out of the way to think like Evan has a means to protect himself. And it's like Corleo's goodwill was something that Evan deemed unnecessary, right? As all of a sudden, we see that Evan sort of looks at Corleo, as Corleo's just thinking like, hero, maybe, I don't know what's going on. He's like, I guess I just always wanted to be that kind of hero. As we see that Corleo's legs have been both torn off of his body, he's missing an arm, and he's all very bloodied, and he is going to die, right? But at this, we see that Evan looks at Corleo and is like, but in spite of all of that, he's like, no wonder I didn't have a clue. As he looks, and we see that Mama's also there with Evan, and Mama's just freaking like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? As we see that she's looking at Corleo's pretty much dead body and freaking out, but Evan's just like, oh, the Demon Lord, and I beat him. As he looks over to Corleo, and Corleo's like, what, I'm alive here? But Evan says that, hey, I'm trading my life to heal you, right? As Evan says, listen, Corleo, I've killed many people. Friend or foe, I've killed anyone necessary. My world was cruel. I couldn't survive there otherwise. Don't think of me as a hero. And he says, a hero fights to protect. You're not a hero because you are strong. You're a hero because you fight. You grow stronger and protect it to fight. He's like, I had forgotten that. I tried to forget it. You have a heroic heart. Everyone will call you a hero. And he's like, be proud, Corleo. Without a doubt, you are a hero. As we eventually get sort of a look into Evan's personal world, as we see that people are calling for Evan as he's sort of like standing behind him. And he's like, oh, hey, Dane. He's like, Irene, Shin, Grisha. And he's like, I'm sorry. And he's like, I couldn't protect a single thing. As he turns around, and we see that these names are just calling for him, like, Evan, Evan, Evan. And he's like, can I ever come over your side? And we see that he sort of falls to the ground as he just says, hey, let's talk again. And eventually we cut to the final page, double page spread of MamaYuyu. Here's where we get chapter title, chapter number 1, The Day I Became a Hero. As we see that Corleo is alive, and we see all of Evan's items laying on the ground, of course, as he is vanished. And we see that Mama is crying there right next to Corleo. I know he spent a lot of time on this chapter, but I feel like this chapter is a very interesting one. It has a bunch of very interesting dynamics in it of what does it mean to be a hero, and eventually Corleo just trying to learn this, and along with the help of EvanAllGreen. It is just very interesting, and even rereading this chapter, like I said, this video is coming out a few months after these chapters have come out. There's a lot of insight that I've gotten for the series, which makes it very interesting, right? Being that I spent too long on the last chapter, we're not going to spend very long on this one. This is Tenmaku Cinema, chapter number 21. It is the final chapter. The movie team sort of just watches the whole movie as Hajime and Karai there. They watch the movie, everybody claps and loves it, right? And, oh, look at that, as Hajime, as Tenmaku's like, oh, hey, the movie belongs to the director. You've really worked so hard, Hajime, right? But Hajime's like, hey, Mr. Tenmaku, when I watch a movie, I am the type who likes to watch all the way to the end credits. As we see all the way at the bottom, we see that the movie was written by Takehiko Tenmaku, right? And it's like, hey, I'm going to pursue a career in filmmaking, and I want to continue working together with you, Tenmaku. So the two of them talk, and oh, look at that, the movie team won a bunch of awards, and Karai's mother issues finally get just fixed in an instant. Oh man, look at that, the rest of the movie team is there, and they all take a picture. And the ending narration just goes like, it's been over 10 years since we've taken this picture, and the movie starring Himeki has gone worldwide, right? The movie's title is The Fang. It was a series. I've got a longer video on the channel talking about my whole thoughts on the chapter and the bittersweet ending that we got with it. You can go check out that video. It'll be linked in the description box down below. So I don't have too much else to say about it, and with that, we're going to go over to Kill Blue chapter number 20. This chapter is titled Versus the Brothers Rendo. We start off with, of course, Tenma, the amazing and great character Tenma, standing around as we see the brother Inji is using his golf club to fire off explosive golf balls where Tenma is. And of course, Tenma is using his power of I kick soccer balls good to get back at him, right? As the two of them come, we eventually just get a note of like, oh, hey, look, Tenma wants to be the ultimate triple threat, right? So there's an action scene where the two of them just swing golf balls and kick soccer balls. Big explosions go off as all of a sudden Tim is like, oh my gosh, this is like truly terrifying. He's like, I mean, I know this guy's a kidnapper, right? But I didn't know he'd be such a horrible person. Like, but is this real? Like, are these exploding golf balls real? Am I not just dreaming here, right? But all of a sudden he's like, man, that sound, that pitch sounded different. As all of a sudden there is a golf ball behind Tenma as he freaks out and jumps out of the way just in time. He's like, how did that golf ball come behind me? He's like, but wait a minute. In golf, there's such a thing as a backspin. As he thinks about it, and he looks over at Inji, and he's like, oh man, of course, he changed to clubs. As we see that he has a full set of clubs there to use whenever he goes to fire off these explosive golf balls, right? At this point, we cut over to where Otogami is, and of course, he's running through all of the hypnotized people who are acting like zombies. He's like, oh crap, there's too many of them. I can't shoot innocent people, and even if I did, I'd run out of ammo before I got them all. And he's like, I'm worried about Tenma, but I can't keep these guys busy forever. And he's like, I just need to get the hell out of here, right? And as he runs outside to our entire fire crew's out here, right? And we see that Nekoda, the person inside of, or the person inside the headphone that Otogami's talking to, is like, hey, it looks like somebody called 911. I mean, it makes sense with all the ruckus going on here, right? But as Otogami runs, it's like, oh, wait a second, and all of these fire people are hypnotized, right? They're all firing their hose at full blast at Otogami, which, if I'm not mistaken, this could very well kill a man. So Otogami is doing a very good job dodging. We see that all of the gurneys that the medics have, they're all shoving them at Otogami. So Otogami just comes up, and he grabs out his gun and shoots some perfectly timed bullets at the hoses of the fire trucks, to where they start just going all out of control and leaking and sort of getting out of people's hands. Otogami grabs one, and then eventually just well, he doesn't, I think he may turn down the power or something to not outright kill these people, but he pretty much just goes and sprays water in a barrier around him to make sure that no people can get to him, right? And Otogami's like, all right, okay, that should buy me a few minutes. And eventually we see that somebody appears behind Otogami. Of course, Otogami's superhuman reflexes, he grabs his gun and turns around. But we see that this is none other than Kappo, of course, who is a person who is on a double date with Tenma in this situation, right? And she's like, what in the world? Why do you have a gun pointed at me, Otogami, right? And Otogami's like, oh, hey, it isn't real. Like, it's an airsoft gun, like, just trying to rearrange her. And he's like, but hey, what are you even doing here? And Kappo's just like, hey, I was worried about you guys. I mean, what happened here? It seemed like a real disaster area. And if this is where they took Norin, and she's like, well, hey, never mind this. Let me take this out for a second. As we see from their back pocket, they take out a lighter. As we see that Kappo here pulls in Otogami's like, hey, I'm going to count to 3, and once I do and you hear the sound of this lighter snapping shut, you will no longer be capable of attacking Kazuma or AG Rendo. As we see that, yes, this is Kazuma in a very elaborate disguise, and eventually we see it just goes to the 3 count, 1, 2, 3, and this lighter snaps shut. As we see that Otogami hears it, and he's like, oh man, he realizes like, oh hey, you're Kazuma Rendo, and he eventually points the gun up, and Rendo's is like, hey, I'm an expert, or Kazuma, I should say, is like, hey, I'm an expert at disguise, but even still, it sure took you a long while to figure that out, right? As he thinks to it, and as Otogami tries to pull the trigger at him, he's like, oh man, I seriously can't do it. I can't attack Kazuma. And that is where we end our chapter with the note of, oh, hey, look at this. Otogami may not be able to harm them anymore. He may have to figure out a way to win today, otherwise than this, right? I do like this whole chapter. It's a really good idea just showing that, like, oh, hey, of course, AG could use different clubs. I think that's probably the best joke of the chapter, but overall, this is just a very solid chapter in general. Next up is Nue's Exorcist, chapter number 17. This chapter is titled, I Was Afraid. We pretty much see that Gakuro's having a dream in the beginning of the chapter where Shiroha is all tied up and chained inside of her, Exorcist home, fortress thing, whatever. And we eventually see that Gakuro's just dreaming about this, and he just tries to go save her. But he's like, hey, wait, Shiroha, just wait, please wait. As he's like, please wait, Fujino. As he wakes up, and Fujino's there, they're in the school, and Gakuro's like, what's going on here? Shiro's like, oh, hey, good morning, Gakuro. And Gakuro's like, hey, where are we? Shiro just says they're in the occult club room, and he's like, Nue brought you here after a whole battle, and healed you of some of your wounds, too. And the two of them just talking, and Shiro's like, hey, my loss of composure over your words led to my defeat. And Gakuro's like, oh, right, I won that thing. But Shiro's like, hey, but I didn't consider that failing. It was your strength that really prevailed. And as they talk, Shiro's like, hey, you really are a good person. He's like, she's like, I'm probably going to die because I lost this battle, but you have a greater purpose to protect people and help Nue, right? And she's like, so you shouldn't worry about me. And she's like, see you. But Gakuro's like, hey, what's going on here, Fujino, right? But Fujino's like, it's been fun. But all of a sudden, we see that Nue and Kyokatsu, I think is the spirit's name, barge into the room, and they're just like, oh man, the restroom of this building is complete. And it's like, well, how are the two of you doing, right? And it's just a big joke here. And Shiro's like, hey, but I'm going to go home and not be alive anymore after this. But Nue's like, hey, no, not a chance, you're not going to be killed. Shiroha's soul gear has something called insidious binds, and pretty much the mechanism here is like that any resistance will cause the tool to strangle me to death and forcibly transport me back home. It's all it takes is an order from the Lord of the Shiroha family, right? And like, as long as they have my course, Kyokatsu's contract can be transported over to someone else, right? And eventually, Nue's like, alright, hey, so can you change to your soul gear for me? She does, and they eventually check out these insidious binds that are on her soul gear, right? But all of a sudden, Nue just takes a look and is like, oh man, that'd be terrible to even break, right? But Nue's like, alright, this is how they take control of you. It's all of a sudden, she just breaks the binds, and yeah, we see that the Lord of the Manor there and the Shiroha family sort of gets this like, oh man, quite the tricks you have there, Nue, right? But Nue pretty much says that she switched over control of the insidious binds to me, and with this, the control that your family had over your life is gone, right? And with this, Nue's like, alright, let's eat dinner. And they eat dinner. There's another random spirit cat girl person there. Sure, I don't know who this is, but okay, there's somebody here. But we see they're all just sort of hanging out here. And Nue's like, hey Shiroha, you'll live here inside the schoolroom, and there'll be a number of new things that you encounter, but from here on out, you'll be living here, right? Pretty much all says, like, cut over a little later, all of the arrangements have been complete. Shiroha and Gakuro will be sleeping in the same room here, but Gakuro's like, hey, I was just gonna go home to my place. But Nue makes an actual good point, saying like, hey, that would mean that I can't maintain a clone through you as your medium, right? So Gakuro's got to stay at school. And you're like, all right, sleep well, you threes. We see that Gakuro, Shiroha, and Kyokatsu are here. We see that there are like two partitions between the two beds, right? And Gakuro, of course, just thinks like, oh, hey, we're really sleeping next to each other. Oh my goodness, this is such a big problem, right? And Shiroha's also there, and as the two of them are just talking, they eventually go to bed, right? And Gakuro makes a stupid excuse so they can sleep next to each other. Like, okay, Gakuro, sure. Why not? As we see the two of them, and they eventually just start talking as, they just, like, talk about everything that happened and how there's no one for Shiroha to rely on, but maybe Gakuro's there to rely on them now. And as they all go to sleep, we eventually cut over to the Shiroha mansion place as we see that some guy there's like, what? Shiroha failed? No, but even so. And he's like, okay, I understand. This is an order from the Lord. Well, damn it to hell. How many times am I going to have to kill my own pupils? As we see this guy standing here, his name is Morioki Fujino, and he is Shiroha's battle instructor and superior. And that's where we end the chapter with an obvious idea of, oh no, it looks like there's going to be a new conflict with this Morioki guy. That's not good. Now, next up is Akane-banashi, chapter number 77, titled I'm Burning Up. And we start off this chapter with a little bit of narration from supposedly Akane, as she goes through and she's like, alright, Wakaru Anisan is a hot commodity, and everybody would agree about that. Koguma Anisan is so much of a pure Rakugo knowledge concentrate that he overwhelms even experienced masters. And Koji Anisan is popular for his honest storytelling and compassion. And all three of them were role models I aspired to be like. No, what am I saying? This is Giriko saying this. I'm just stupid, right? But as Giriko just says, like, so I decided that in the same way as they serve as inspiration to me, I wanted to be a role model for others like me to aspire to be like as a senior apprentice, as he thinks of Akane. And as we sort of just go on, we see the moment from last chapter from when Giriko is sitting down with Makaru, and he's just like, I'm just not as good as Akane, right? And he's just keep on talking. Giriko just says, like, hey, her improvement is so much of on another level. Every single event she can completely change her entire style. It's like she's just been built differently, and I'm painfully aware that I'm not like her, right? And Giriko's just like, but even still, I don't want to give up to myself. And he's like, I know it's just like pointless pride, but still, I want to be like you guys. And in terms of, I want to run ahead of my little sister Prince in terms of skill. So he looks up a very determined face to Makaru, just saying like, and be the kind of older brother or prince she can look up to. As all of the fireworks are going off. And Makaru's like, so do you have anything specific in mind you want to do? And supposedly, Giriko says something, but all the fireworks going off sort of, we can't hear what Giriko actually said, but we get Makaru's reaction of, yeah, I like that. He's like, good on you. You and Akanaru are both taking this super seriously, right? And at this point, Makaru sends up, and he makes a pretty big declaration, is standing up and saying, I think it's time I did the same about graduating to Shinichi. Which, oh my gosh, that is a massive deal, right? Well, all of a sudden we cut over to Kyoji, who of course was in the infirmary of the Shigasai festival, of course. It's, oh man, he got drunk off of candies, right? And it's the big thing where he gets a phone call all of a sudden. He's like, oh hell, hello, who is this, right? And we learn that this is Master Miroku, right? I don't think that we have actually seen this guy too much. I think we've seen him in passing, but we haven't really focused on him, right? But he pretty much says that, like, hey, I've got something for years only. So he's like, are you alone right now, Kyochi? Because we see him, and we also see Rokuro sitting there. And that's pretty big, because Rokuro is a very important character in this series, right? So eventually we see that Akane and Koguma are also staying beside each other. And they see that Kyoji is sort of going off on his own, right? And Akane's like, hey, do you think he's going to be fine over there? But Koguma's like, hey, he'll be fine. He just believes that, Koguma pretty much says that, yeah, it'll be completely fine, right? But as the two of them, talk, Akane's like, hey, so, hey, I hope you do good in that 4-person event going on, right? As we remember, the whole part of the 4-person event is that it is Master Ikin hosting it, taking, 4 people of each of the levels. So we know Kaisei is going to be there. We know that, of course, Koguma's going to be there. One other guy is going to be there. I don't think we really know too much about him. And also, of course, Hikaru is going to be there since she beat Akane in that big championship sort of deal, right? But Koguma pretty much just says, like, this is perhaps the greatest chance I'll ever have to make a name for myself, so I intend to take full advantage of it too, right? As eventually as all of this happens, Akane just thinks, like, man, weakness is not the same as inexperience, as they watch the fireworks goes off, right? And as everything's going on, Akane just talks about her inexperience, right? But she's just like, hey, if I need to catch up to all of these people, I need to become a Futatsumi, right? As you sort of see, it's a little bit of a big deal there, too, that she's just saying, like, hey, I'm going to do this myself also, right? At this point, we cut over to a different character, of course, that being Shiguma, the high person of the Shiguma school, right? The master. As he's just like, oh, man, and how rare is it to grace you with your presence, right? And we see that it is Miss Urara, right, who of course is there, and she's pretty much staying around, and Shiguma's just like, hey, do you really feel like paying me a visit? But she's just like, no, I was just in a mood of where you caught her, right? So the two of them just have some laughing, and eventually they bring up Rokuro. Is Urara's like, hey, so the Kashiwara Wonder Child was asking me about Shiguma's art, right? And she says, like, I think he assumed I would be the easiest person to ask about it. And she's just like, I found that rather insulting. And Shiguma's like, well, did you tell him anything? But Urara just says that she's like, certainly not. I made up a likely excuse and left him in the dark, right? But she says, I'm not cut out to be that helpful. Does that really surprise you? But Shiguma's just like, no. And he just says, like, the Urara-chan that I would know wouldn't have told him. So he's just like, people just don't change that much, right? And Urara just says they don't change, and yet we have changed quite a bit. As we take a look from a Shigasai festival from long, long ago, supposedly, as we see a young group of 4 Rakugokas all standing there, and we can see one who's obviously, I think, shirtless there, and it is Shiguma, and we can obviously tell that one of the others is a female there. It is most likely Urara, and we also see one other person standing there, who, if I'm not mistaken, is supposed to be this Master Miroku, who we heard about earlier in the chapter, and one more who I am guessing is supposed to be the big guy of the series. Is it Shiguma? No, it's not Shiguma. It's not Shinta. Shinta's Akane's father. Oh boy, why am I forgetting his name? I'm gonna go check one of my Akane-banashi volumes, because I remember his name, but I just don't. Isho Arakawa. That's what his name is. I thought it started with an S, but I know it didn't. But yeah, Isho Arakawa. Yeah, how could I forget that, right? But another person who I'm guessing is Isho also standing there. But cutting back to the present, Shiguma just says, like, hey, we can't help that. We've all run on our different axes. Our paths must part ways, but to keep on moving forward or we will never reach anything. As we get a final panel looking at the 5 Shiguma school children there, as we see that Koguma's there, sort of all looking out into the sunset. We see Koguma, Akane, Mikaru, and Giriko all sort of looking off. So we see Kyoji, who is talking on a phone, right? Showing that even if these people are all friends today, maybe in the future they won't be. So this is honestly a great chapter, just wrapping up this whole, like, joke arc in a way, but just showing what everybody's doing, and eventually showing us a really interesting moment of the past of the Rakugokas and how everybody used to be friends, but now it's not quite that same way. So that's just a really awesome chapter, in my opinion, and yeah, I don't think you can just go wrong with it, right? Next up is Blue Box, chapter number 116, titled It's Rude, as we get a color page with Chinatsu sitting on the front of it, sort of taking off a ball cap while sitting down, right? It's a really nice color page, if I say so myself, right? But we see, we cut to the present where, of course, Taiki is there at the big championship, right? Or, I forget what this thing was, the tournament. I don't remember. Was it like the pre-qualifier to go to nationals? I don't remember, and honestly, I don't care that much, right? But the whole point is that Taiki's a little pissed off. We see that Kyo and some of the other people are there, right? And, Kyo's like, hey, so did anything happen? And eventually we just see that Taiki's just like, it's like I'm only in it for a win, but I wanted to be used to prove something, to prove I'm strong, right? And he's just like, after having worked this hard, it'd be rude to tell myself that there's no use in fighting anyway, right? As we eventually see that Taiki is looking at the lineup for all the matches going on here. And he looks and he says that if him and Mochizuki both stay in the running, then they'll face off in the semifinals, right? And Taiki just thinks, like, if he's really good enough to be one of the best teams in Sajikawa, he's like, why does he sell himself so short like that, right? At this point, we get a Kyo and Ayame moment, as the two of them are sort of just going, and we see that Kyo gets up from his seat and is like, all right, I'm almost up to go and win my match, right? But as he's going on, Ayame walks up and is like, hey, she's like, hey, I'm going down to record the tournament too, right? And Kyo's like, oh, well, thanks for helping out, doing everything you do, right? But she just says, like, hey, I'm sorry about earlier. And Kyo's like, well, okay, like, what are you talking about, right? But Ayame just looks and she's like, I mean, when I asked you about, like, who you thought would win, right? And Kyo's just like, oh, and he's like, oh, I didn't really mind that at all. And he just says, like, I get why you might see me that way. And he's like, I'm not like Taiki. I don't shout my goals to the heavens. But he says that's one of the best things about Taiki, and he just thinks like how earlier some people laughed at Taiki, and he's like, I wonder if Taiki's really scared, right? And he's like, if he doesn't reach his goals, wouldn't it be just a shock to your gut and everything, right? And he just continues like talking about Taiki and Shono and how people can laugh at them, make fun of them, right? But they're both playing it safe and moving forward despite all of the risks, right? Or they're not playing it safe, right? So eventually Kyo's just like, he's like, but deep down I'm determined to snatch as many victories if I can, even if I am playing the safe route, right? So he just looks at Ayame and says like, hey, so please cheer me on, right? And Ayame just takes notice, and she's just like, well, for what it's worth, I think you work so hard, it makes you all cool. And she's just like, good luck, right? And she sort of just runs away, and Kyo's like, all right, what was all of that about, right? Well, eventually, they're all, we cut to later, while we see that Mochizuki is sitting there with one of his friends, and of course Taiki is walking around him at the same time. And we see the Mochizuki saying to one of his friends, like, hey, he's like, earlier while I was waiting for a match, there was some kid saying he wanted to go to nationals. I couldn't help but laughing. He's like, well, maybe we've all forgotten what it feels like, as we sort of just get to point that everybody in South College just seen Hyodo's overwhelming strength for so long, and with used to being the same sort of powerhouse, they can't say things like that because they just know they're not as good, right? And they pretty much just say it. And Mochizuki's even like, but I mean, people do say that it's important for people to voice their ambitions aloud, right? But he's like, hey, I'm just too afraid to even bring up nationals. Even though at the end, the future only amount to your talent is small for you put in. And he's like, it's rude to the masters when an average nobody talks about his dreams, right? And he's just like, it's just called knowing your place. Which is a very interesting sort of deal, because I understand what he's saying. Like, it's not fair to the people who've put in hours and years of work to be a master at something to then just say that I'm going to be better than you as a high schooler. But even still, his point just sort of falls flat in the point of, oh, look at that. I mean, Taiki has put into hard work and effort, so. But eventually the two of them turn around, and Mochizuki looks at Taiki, gives him like a shit-eating grin as he just looks at him, and he's like, oh, did you overhear us there, right? But as time goes on, we eventually cut forward to where Mochizuki and Taiki are in that semifinal round Taiki was talking about earlier, right? And as they're sort of talking, getting ready to shake hands, Mochizuki's like, hey, don't be so mad about earlier. He's just like, that's just how we think. It's not like we're going to tell you what to do, right? But Taiki says like, hey, don't worry. I know how you feel. As they get into the match, and it's a bunch of badminton playing stuff, and the whole point of this whole scenario is Taiki just thinking like, hey, I've thought about all of this too. Like, I've thought about that, how I don't know my own limits and how this might be a far-off goal, but I don't think that's a reason to put myself down. There's zero chance that I would ever let that way of thinking get the better of me, right? As eventually we cut back over to the gym at the high school there. I forget what their high school's name is. It's something, right? But to Taiki and Chinatsu and everybody's high school in the series, as we see that Nishida's there playing a round of Hyodo, and he's like, hey, how are you? Do you remember that tortoise and the hare thing that we were talking about before? And Nishida's like, well, Taiki's less like a tortoise, more like a wild boar, don't you think, right? And Haru's just sort of raises an eyebrow to this, but Nishida just says, like, even a hare can be overtaken more easily than you think, right? And still Haru's just like, oh, okay, dude, what are you talking about, Nishida? It's a good into the chapter, and it is really just showing okay, look at that. Taiki's stealing his resolve, and I do like the fast progression this chapter holds, just sort of like building up something of, right, Mochizuki versus Taiki is going to happen, and then we have a few moments in between with Mochizuki and Taiki and that other guy, and with Ayame and Kyo sort of just building it up for Taiki shows what he's sort of made of in his resolve, so pretty good. Solid blue box chapter. Next up is Elusive Samurai, chapter number 125. This chapter is titled Reunion 1337. And we got a cool color page with Tokiyuki on it, sort of in like a dragon scale dress. There's like a water sea serpent dragon thing coming up behind him, and also Ginba's there. And it looks like Ginba's getting cut by Tokiyuki's sword. So, okay, that's a little interesting. It's a beautiful color page, don't get me wrong, but in typical Elusive Samurai fashion, let's speed through this chapter, right? Alright, so if you don't remember what happened last time, there's the whole thing with Ayako and Tokuyuki, where Ayako's fallen off the ledge, and Tokuyuki had to pull Ayako back up, right? But then all of a sudden, this weird guy came down, saying that he wanted to marry Ayako and to win her in a duel, right? And Tokyo's like, no, you're not going to do that. So they do a little bit of a fight. And oh my gosh, Akie almost fires some arrows into dude, and it's a big deal, right? But oh man, look at that, Ayako's overwhelming him, and oh man, knocking him down the stairs because, oh man, would you believe that? It's the high ground, get the high ground, Anakin, or whatever that joke is from episode 3, right? And then I don't know if you also remember from last time, the anti-Hojo weapon that Uesugi Dono and Shiba had. Well, what is it? It's Yasue, Tokuyuki's uncle. Like, oh no, this is a really big deal, and you know this is really bad because Yasuge doesn't have anything written on his forehead, right? Which, it's sad because it's such a funny joke, right? But it is the secret weapon now stopped Hojo party. We get a little bit of narration just saying that the unyielding Hojo Yasuge staged 2 rebellions with the Shinano warriors following the Nakasendai War. The first was a crush in Shino by Sadamune, and the second was in Kamakura, but it was easily put down by Shiba, who captured, of course, Yasuge. And even though he was an important figure, it is not known what became of him after that. Sort of showing that in history, yeah, Yasuge didn't appear after that second thing that Shiba happened, but it's being used as historical fiction here, right? I do really like this note, right? Shiba's like, right, Tokuyuki, you better surrender, right? If you do, I'll spare Yasuge's life, right? Tokuyuki is just freaking out, and everybody's just freaking out here. So like, what's going to happen? All of a sudden, Nagao, the zombified warrior, goes to attack Kojiro and pretty much knocks Kojiro down in an instant, right? Like, his sword is weakened. And at that point, we see that Shiba is just like, man, what's going on here? Like, Tokuyuki, I've got this in checkmate. Like, Akie, I've got you caught too. And Akie's looking up, right? As Tokuyuki says, like, Uncle, oh no, Uncle, Yasuye, he's like, Shiba, Iniga, I will never forgive you, right? And he's like, you coward. And he's just like, what should I do? I need time to think, like, well, like, what's going on here? But all of a sudden, as Nagao is going to finally almost cut down Tokuyuki, somebody comes in and kicks off the blade with their leg, right? As we see this person comes in and looks down to Kojiro and just says, like, hey, it's been a long time, Kojiro. As we see, this is Shina. Of course, this was the person with Masamune who had her leg, or not her both of her arms cut off, or it was some amputation. And she's like, oh, Tokuyuki-sama, my new master. And she's like, your servant Shina awaits your orders. Don't get me wrong, this is actually an amazing chapter for as much crap as I gave it. The beginning with the whole thing of, oh man, this guy wants to get Ayako because of old traditions, right? It's bad, just you can throw it out, like, it's not good. And then Akie, of course, is showing like, oh man, I fire arrows, so I'm gonna take this guy out, right? It's just bad, but I do really love the idea of how the anti-Hojo weapon is a person. It's Yasuye, right? It's the one family member that Tokuyuki has left, right? And it's a pretty big and interesting thing there, as Nagao comes down next and almost beats up Kojiro. It's a very interesting thing, and Tokuyuki's thinking of like, Shiba, I will never forgive you, right? He doesn't even say I'll kill you, he says I'll never forgive you. And then eventually, as Nagao's coming in, Shina comes in to save the day. This is really awesome. Like I said, it's not like the best chapter of the week or anything, but this is still as solid as can be, right? But then we're going to finish it up with Witch Watch, chapter number 124. This chapter is titled The Day of the Disaster, part 11, right? We're getting up in these Day of the Disaster whole type deals, right? But we see that Wolf dug Nico out of the hole that she was in, being that Wolf beat Kumagi last time with the help of Nimue. We see that Nico's just freaking out, like, man, I was fine, and suddenly there was no ground, there was a big dark wall, and like, whoosh, like, ah! So it's pretty nice, and Nimue's like, all right, Nico, you can calm down, right? And I love just Wolf's reaction of, man, you must have really wanted somebody to talk to, right? But at this point, Nico looks over to Kumagi, right? And he's like, oh, Kumagi. But Wolf is just like, hey, she ain't dead. She's just worn out, both physically and magically, right? But then we see that Nimue is there, and Nimue and Nico sort of just hug it out, and they just talk a little bit. And Nimu's like, man, I can't believe to understand, like, how much you've been through, Nico. And she's like, if there's any way I'll help, I'll gladly do it for you, right? And she's like, because we're friends, right? And as they do that, Nico finally thinks about, like, oh, right, all of the others, like, we were separated and they were attacked too, like, we have to go help them, right? But Wolf just is like, hey, wait, they're fine, they'll push over this. He pulls out his phone, and we see that in their group text or whatever, in their group chat. Of course, we know that, we see that both Kanshi and Miharu, which I find it pretty funny because Miharu has his image of a rose and Keigo of his Tengu fan, right? But pretty much as that's going on, we pretty much see it like, hey, they both won their battle even if they got a little bit of heat, if it was a little hard, right? And they're both like, oh wow, both Miharu and Kan won, and like, and it's a little bit of a joke to where they're like, wow, there's some awfully casual descriptions in the group chat, right? But Keigo's like, all right, well, they're headed our way now, so it's no big deal. Wolf is then just like, and he's like, oh, hey, did you hear that, Kumagi? He's just like, sounds like your buddies are all 6 feet under, right? But we see that Kumagi's just like, but what about Morito, right? And Nico's like, yeah, we don't have any messages from him, which means he's still fighting, right? As Kumagi's just like, well, he can't win against Ran. And everybody's like, well, how are you so sure about all of that, right? But she just says that, like, Ran's the greatest warlock he is, and pretty much saying that, like, he's super strong and he's so rare, he's practically unheard of, right? It's like, he's pretty much like, the way to beat him is just doesn't exist, right? Saying, like, he's so powerful. As we cut over to where Morito and Ran are fighting, as we see an image that, of course, really looks like the whole thing is like Ran has punched through Morito's stomach. But of course, we see that it just barely missed him as Morito goes through and catches his arm on his side, sort of squeezes it shut. And at this point, he sort of uses gravity on his side and momentum to pick up Ran and swing him around and crash his back into the ground, right? We see a little blood fly out of Ran's mouth. Morito goes in for another punch, but Rand gets out of the way too soon, right? As eventually we just see it like Morito's like, man, you got me there, that's good, right? But we see the two of them are just fighting, and we see that Morito is just like doing some thinking. He's just like, man, I slammed him into the ground to fall my strength, and he's still not really injured. He's like, talk about incredible recovery speed. He's like, so why didn't he just come at me then from the beginning? He's like, that was his chance. I was super wide open. Is it because he hadn't fully healed yet? As he just really thinks, and he's eventually just like, well, then do his internal injuries take longer to heal than external ones? He's like, it's only a little, but I think his recovery speed is slowing down as a whole. And pretty much going like, he's tired slowly but surely. I am slowly wearing him down. They keep going through and just trading blows, and eventually they just get talking, and Morito's just like, hey, I'm gonna get you. But Ran's like, hey, do you have an idea of how many times I've tried to kill myself? If you have any way to kill me, I'd love to see it. But he's pretty much just saying, like, you're clearly angling for something big. You have been this whole time. So he's like, so you have some trick up your sleeve, huh? And he's like, do it. Kill me if you can, right? Eventually we cut over and we see Connie's walking with Tokito, right? And they're pretty much talking, and the whole point is like, oh man, Ron's immortal, no one can kill him, right? Like, let alone some privileged little ogre boy and his dumb hair spike, right? Which is a little rude to Morito, but I mean, whatever, right? But as they're talking, Khan's just like, hey, shut up, no picking on Morito and his weird hair choices. And he's just like, hey, you're just a guy who loves to be judgy about everything, right? And eventually Khan's just like, hey, first and foremost, we're not out to kill anybody. If we were, you ought to have already been dead, which, good threat. I like that, Khan, right? And they're pretty much saying, like, the only way we've talked is that we want to incapacitate him, right? And, like, we knew this fight was coming, so Morito's been thinking of just how to do that for ages, right? And eventually we cut over to where Wolf is with Nico, Nimue, and Kumagi, as he just says that, like, hey, that's where Miharu comes in, or, like, Miharu, and as they're talking, like, they're like, wait a minute, didn't Rain already say that Miharu trying to drain him could endanger Miharu's life, right? And Wolf was like, hey, that's the plan that Morito put together. It's the only way he could find to beat Ran, and he said, he told Miharu to stay prepared so we could be ready for it on a moment's notice, right? And as they're there, we see that Miharu's looking determined as he's looking to get to everybody. And, like, okay, so are we on the right path here? And, like, this trail doesn't lead to number 2 route. But Miharu's like, it's the right path. I'm not going to Nico, right? And he's like, I'm going to where Morito is, right? Of course, Fran and Jekyll, who are with him, are just like, go to Morito, so you aren't going to guard Nico, right? But Miharu's like, no, Morito is still fighting, which means I have to go help him. That was our deal, right? We go over to Morito, where he is fighting Ran, and we see that he is pulling out the Kai Goku move, where pretty much he just bulks up his muscles. He just goes in and punches into Ran, and Ran goes flying. And Ran's just like, oh my god, what the hell is that? He's like, where do you hide all of that bulk, right? And what's his name? Morito's just like, I kept this trick hidden up my sleeve, literally, right? As Ran's like, hey, where'd you learn that, right? And Morito's like, hey, I had a real ogre of a coach, right? And he just says, like, I'll buy time with all the skills my master taught me. This isn't a real trick. There is a way to incapacitate Ran, and Miharu has it. The Twilight. And if you don't remember what the Twilight is, it is the rose stem that saps somebody's full life. Of course, we saw that with Morito whenever he got it put on him and his arm kept being tied to people, so it was a funny joke there, but they're going to use the Twilight to try to incapacitate Ran, so awesome Witch Watch chapter, just building up, hey, this is how we plan to beat Ran, which is just amazing. And that is all the chapters for this week. I feel like I talked about those 11 chapters for a little while, especially MamaYuyu and a few of the other ones, but this was definitely a good weekend jump. A lot of really solid chapters, of course, going through. But now on to the rankings, where I'm actually looking on this now, and let's see. Witch Watch, Marshal, Asumi, Akane-banashi, Undead Unluck. I'm forgetting Kill Blue in here somewhere, which I don't know how I managed to do this, but I did. So we're going to do a few of the live edits to my ranking from 4 months ago. So definitely Witch Watch was the best chapter this week. I really enjoyed a whole thing of just showing that they have a way to beat Ran in a roundabout strategy. Next up is going to be Marshal Master Asumi, because that was just an amazing chapter, showing build-up of a complete chapter from beginning to end, and ending with the Overground tournament starting. Then Marshal Master Asumi, then Akane-banashi, of course, showing everybody's resolve and getting a look back into the past with all of the Masters, and our great one. Undead Unluck was good. MamaYuyu, I ranked 5th after that. Then Tenmaku Cinema, Blue Box Noise Exorcist, Ichinose Family, and Elusive Samurai. I am going to change this ranking up a little bit here, so I'm going to take from Nue's Exorcist to Ichinose's Family to the Elusive Samurai. I'm going to move all of them down one. Move Tenmaku Cinema down. Tenmaku Cinema. And then we're going to add Kill Blue in. So, Control C. Or, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control... Or whatever, it's fine. Kill Blue. Which means the updated ranking now is Witch Watch, Marshal Master Asumi, Akane-banashi, Undead Unluck, MamaYuyu, Blue Box, Kill Blue, Tenmaku Cinema, Nue's Exorcist, Ichinose Family, and the worst chapter being the Elusive Samurai, which again, retroactively, I'm going to change to Ichinose Family, because, yeah, it wasn't a great chapter all in all. I mean, and I definitely feel like some of the Elusive Samurai points in there were really good, especially here on a later week reread, so definitely very good. And then the character for the week, of course, I picked EvanAllGreen from MamaYuyu, because how could I not? I mean, with a name is EvanAllGreen, I mean, there were a lot of good characters this week, don't get me wrong. Rip, we just saw how good of a guy he was. Nito and Yoshitoki, especially Yoshitoki, just showed how good of a person he was. Akane-banashi, I really liked Giriko's whole, resolve building thing. Same with, Taiki and Blue Box. But you gotta give it to EvanAllGreen. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you there. Yeah. And with that is everything for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I feel like this was an especially long one, but we see how long all the recordings are here a little later whenever I get this thing uploaded. So, oh boy, I may have a night in ahead for me, but of course, if you want to join our community and talk some Shonen Jump with us whenever we get ready to do it, there's a Discord and Twitter communities linked in the description box down below. And while you're going in there to maybe join this thing, so if you won't mind, hitting the subscribe button, it is just a little button you can press, and it really helps me out. And if you want to see more of this content, that's probably the easiest way to get it to you effectively. And if you want to comment on what I thought of any of these chapters, hopefully you will leave it also down in the comments down below. And yeah, I'll read your comment. If I got something to say to it, I'll say something. If I don't, I don't. But I'll probably have something to say to it, right? Without further ado, I don't have too much else to say. This was Weekly Shonen Jump issue number 41 of 2023. And I'll be back next time with Weekly Shonen Jump issue number 42 of 2023. Guys, this was really fun. This will be Glowplasma231 signing out.